Right. Evening, everyone. I hope everyone's well. We've got a storm looming in the distance, so I don't know whether the thunder will arrive. I might have to unplug my modem, etc. So I'll just make sure that I'm on my 4G as well while I'm lecturing. Well, mind you, I should have um, protection in terms of the modem. Okay, Charles, that's absolutely fine. Right, everyone. So just to go through where we are now, and it's authenticity and ethicality and leadership. And what is quite interesting is that we do this in a year where we've had the most elections ever, the most people involved in elections ever. I I always question those two things when it comes to leadership, authenticity and ethicality. The old joke is, how do you know whether a politician is lying? How do you know whether a politician is lying, guys? How do you know whether a politician is lying? Can anyone guess? Yeah, their lips are moving. So, the moment those lips move, you start questioning. Sorry, I'm having a cappuccino as well while lecturing. You start questioning those two things. So let's have a glance at who I put on here, because I think at this stage everyone will know that I have an intense dislike of this individual. I think he is evil personified. I think he is the biggest con artist in the world. I honestly think that he is the most dangerous thing that can happen to the world, and that the elections in November is a test of the decency of the American people. I recently watched some assaults that took place at his rallies. People who don't look like his supporters get assaulted. So it's quite interesting. Well, that's the concern, Tyrone. Again, out of a population of 330 million, give or take, the best they can find is this old buffoon and Kamala, who is taking serious strain. I mean, some of the nonsense that's coming out of her mouth at this stage is deeply concerning. But when we talk to and turn to our own politicians, I mean, we have a vice president that is as dodgy as they come. I mean, he's now being investigated for multi millions of rands and tenders that were allocated under his supervision to his children. He lives a lifestyle of a rock star that earns 20, 30, 40, 50 times what his salary is. So we are dealing with extreme levels of corruption, extreme levels of a concern around ethicality and authenticity. The latest one is Trump just lying. And I find some of the stuff that we see here quite interesting, because the first time he ran for election in 2016, they started fact checking everything he says. And the scary thing is, he lies so many times that in the end, you don't know the truth from the lies. But to me, I just assume everything he says is a lie. So the big lie at the moment is about Helene and how federal government hasn't done anything, despite the fact that the Republican governors are saying the response from the feds have been fantastic. He goes and contradicts them. Obviously, there's Milton on the way now. And how's it, Walter? If you want to see some devastation, tomorrow morning, I would imagine around 6 o'clock, Milton is expected to hit the Florida coast, or Tampa Bay, in fact. It's predicted that it's the worst storm in 100 years. It's a Category 4 hurricane. They were hoping that it would reduce to a Cat 3, and you're looking at wind speeds of 130 miles an hour. And then obviously they then have the issue of the storm surge, which, yeah, could go as high as 15 feet. So a real concern. So he lies about that. Then he talks about the idea of arrests, etc. The idea of weaponizing administration. The one thing that Biden's never done is he's never prompted the legal side of his government to do anything. They've done it on their own. And then you can just see more, the idea of giving, I don't know if you guys saw, giving Putin the COVID test kits when Americans couldn't get them themselves. It is this constant lies and avalanche of nonsense. And you can just keep reading there, guys. And those untruths, people start believing them. In the 2020 election, remember, there was Antiva. Then there was the rumor how how Democrats stayed young by drinking babies' blood, and people were believing that. So we're dealing with this, and we have to lecture this stuff here. So when we look at, and guys, please do me a favor, find that. I can't stream it, unfortunately. Just search for it in YouTube. It is, for me, and it is from a TV show. I think it was called The Morning News or something. But it is absolutely astonishing. It is Jeff Daniels. I can't screen it here, guys, but you need to watch that kind of moment in honesty and in American history. I think it's from about 2011, somewhere around there. Please find that, the idea of why, and it's on YouTube, why America is not the greatest country in the world. It's so eye-opening, T. And on top of that, it's the way that it's said, and it's just backed up with facts, and it's backed up with detail, which really is concerning. So when we look at authenticity, for me, authenticity summarizes into the idea of what you see is what you get. These aren't people who have hidden agendas. These aren't people who create a persona and wear a mask in presenting themselves to the world. These are individuals that when you meet them, there is this serious consistency in behavior. But the key thing is that it results in trust, that it leads to trust. And we know that the one thing that has died along with ethics and ethicality is trust. I think trust as a concept has disappeared completely, where people don't trust anyone. I don't trust a single politician to represent my interests. I don't even have a party that I really support, which is really, really problematic. If you think of the importance of trust, guys, tell me how many people you actually trust in the world. Well, that's the scary part, is that you're choosing the worst of the two evils. That's a wonderful way of putting it, actually, Chels. How many people do you truthfully trust in your life? How many people do you trust? Just give me an idea. Quickly count. See how many of you get past one hand. 3 at the most. That's a big number, Tanya. 2 people, Sina. Yeah. 7 is amazing. You're surrounded by really good people then, Chelsea. I think gosh, yeah, I don't think I trust more than, I don't trust more than 2 people in the world, guys. I really don't trust more than 2 people in the world. That's wonderful, Chelsea. That is a wonderful thing to have. So, guys, it's about this idea of where you're walking your talk. Who here is authentic all the time, where what you see is what you get? Or are there times that it's appropriate to wear a mask? Are there times where you present a mask that might hide the real you? Who here is authentic all the time? What you see is what you get? Or who here is very good? Yeah, workplace is different. Who wears different masks to different settings or in different settings? What masks do you wear? Why is that, Oms? Is your mask a real one? It's not even a metaphorical one. Why do they see you before you say a thing? Please unpack that for us further, Oms. Guys, I think people wear masks all the time. And the moment you start talking, oh yeah, no, well, that's wonderful news. Yeah, I have quite a descriptive face as well, I have to admit. So when we look at authenticity, guys, I love this bit here. To thine own self be true. And it really is that who you are is what you represent to the world. Who you are is really an indication of your deeply held values, your deeply held beliefs. It's about your morals, and it's about honesty and integrity and decency and presenting that to the world. So when we think of the idea of authenticity, you talk about your internal values, but for me, more important than your values would be your character, would be the thing that defines you, would be the thing that you would, if you were asked to define what you are and what you stand for, your character will drive that decision. And the truth is, it is being that way despite the presence of external environmental factors. So the truth is, it is about representing your experiences, your thoughts, your wants, etc., etc., etc. How easy is that to do? Who struggles to do that? And be honest, who struggles to be authentic all the time? Let me ask it differently. Who works for authentic leaders? Cleo, tell us more, Cleo. What masks do you wear? Tell us
Well,
what
I
you
wear
do.
the mask that I try to just keep a happy face. I don't really want to disturb the peace. So even at work, when people
Oh,
try to
okay.
start nonsense with me, I guess I can be a bit of a people pleaser. I know that's not a great quality, but yes, I can be a people pleaser.
It's very difficult, but a pleaser is not an authentic person, which is a real issue because there must be some sort of cognitive dissonance there where, what you're expecting to do in terms of pleasing is not really aligned with your values and your belief systems. I don't know. You guys know what cognitive dissonance is? Where one set of values is out of step with another set of values. I always love people who smoke, who are constantly wanting to give up. And then when they have a cigarette, they beat themselves up because, the idea and the ideal is this healthy individual, but then they give in to smoking and this real sort of take a baseball bat to yourself moment happens. Who here has ever smoked and tried to stop smoking? Maybe I shouldn't ask that. No, I don't want to know that answer, truthfully. Guys, so in terms of authentic leaders, I think it really is this way of consistently representing who we are. Um, yeah, the mask is quite interesting there. Cleo, give me examples of masks that you wear. Well, Tanya, but can I be honest with you? I think that's how I read you, actually. I think you are quite honest. I think you also are quite clear in terms of what your values and your beliefs are. And I think that's shucks. Sorry, guys, there's some lightning around. Hey, Matt. Yeah, that's all. Sorry, my son is in the office with me. Um, so the truth is, I think, yeah, being honest sometimes also makes you unpopular. Okay, guys, we've got a bit of a storm starting here. Right. So when we think of authenticity and authentic leadership, it comes from positive psychology. Now, in psychology, we have a number of schools of thought. Let me just quickly type it in so I can show that to you. So those are your schools of thought. I don't want to show those extras. I don't think we need that. Those are the sort of main schools of thought. Who studied psych in their undergrad? Who studied psychology in their undergrad? Anyone do industrial psychology as part of their undergrad? But in terms of the schools of thought, now obviously positive psychology sits in there generally as part of humanism, and we can see the kind of theorists that were part of it. Behaviorists essentially argue that your personality is a consequence of reward and punishment. Gestalt psychology is about seeing the whole, is about seeing the bigger picture. Cognitivism is based on that idea, I think, therefore I am. So your thoughts essentially, and how you train your thoughts and how you create structures in your mind, will guide your behavior. Psychoanalysis, who knows what psychoanalysis is about? It's Freud and Jung and those kinds of individuals. Remember, it's about the unconscious. And if you've ever read around Freud, it's about the id, the ego, and the superego. And the id being this really nasty, naughty thing that tells you to satisfy your baser instincts. The ego trying to be the rational part, and the superego, sorry, coming back and beating you up when you've let the id win. Guys, yeah, and then just humanism is where we are. It's positive psychology. If you ever get an opportunity, these are wonderful books to read. Honestly, read Maslow's stuff. Carl Rogers' writing is something to behold. Oh, shucks, and now I've slipped my mind. Who is the other one? Viktor Frankl. If you ever get a chance, guys, read Viktor Frankl. And the essence of positive psychology is that your entire life should be spent trying to self-actualize. So part of your honesty and your authenticity is about self-actualization. It's about presenting yourself to the world. If you ever get a chance, guys, please read this Man's Search for Meaning. Well worth it. I would definitely take a pick of that right now. A real wonderful example of positive psychology. Cheers, Charles. Cheers. Please have a find if you can. It's going to cost you about 200-300 rand. Well worth the read, guys. Man's Search for Meaning. So if we come to positive psychology, the idea is that you are building yourself to authenticity, but the danger is that you could end up being inauthentic, which is serious in terms of cognitive dissonance. Who has heard the term cognitive dissonance before? Don't know if anyone's heard that before. The problem is when you wear a mask too long. Okay, no, that's fine. When you wear a mask too long, it becomes a problem in terms of how your behaviors essentially contradict your personality, your values, your belief systems. Cleo, do you sometimes suffer this? I'm picking on Cleo just because I can.
Yeah, like that's I actually don't know. Like, I was just read this.
Okay.
No, look, I think I'm very familiar with my beliefs. I know what I believe in, whatever. But
Okay.
sometimes I think maybe I can be very easily influenced, specifically at the workplace, and I just want to like just go with whatever everyone says. So I will wear that mask of like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, happy, even though I'm like,
Oh my word. Yeah. What do you do again, Cleo? I know you're in marketing, hey?
yeah, I work in medical sales. but I'm doing a whole bunch of things
Oh
at the
dear
moment.
Lord.
I
Okay,
work
no,
for
well,
a
I
medical
need
sales
to.
company. I work for a medical sales
Oh dear.
company. I'm repping 2 days a week, and I'm doing this course, and I've got like office duties as well.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Yeah, sorry. I need something because my hair is fantastic, but I want my hair more fantastic. What drugs?
Well, unfortunately,
What
not
drugs
so.
have
I
you got?
can't offer you anything. I work in gynecology sales. I supply
Um,
supplies gynecological
moving right
services.
along. That's one way of stopping a conversation. Okay, guys, so in terms of authentic leadership, I quite like this descriptions. Confident, hopeful, optimistic, resilient, standing up when you get knocked down, and high moral character. These are kinds of things that are so deficient in our world. It's very difficult to find leaders that live every one of those elements. So, in terms of the idea of transformational leadership, they go hand in hand. Transformational leaders go hand in hand with authentic leaders. Remember, we spoke about how transformational leaders have this invisible energy field around them that get people to perform at a much higher level than they actually believe they can perform at. And to do that, it's about authenticity. It is about being honest. It's about truthful. It's about living your values, living your beliefs. This one is this idea of the so-called pseudo transformational leader. And I think it really is about manipulation. And the reason I have that picture there is that I think that to me is one of the greatest manipulators in the world. The person that plays so close to his playbook is this individual here. I think this guy is a master manipulator. He's also an idiot and other things that I can call him. But I think sometimes we have these transformational leaders that get people to behave in ways that are really, really suspect. And it really is about manipulation. Give me examples of pseudo transformational leaders in South Africa. And we have a good few. We have a good few. I mean, my province, 40% of our people voted for one of them. These individuals that are absolutely, yeah, I'm in KZN. So you can imagine to go a little bit further to the last letter in the alphabet. Yeah, for me, I think that defines who he is. Self-serving, unethical, literally should be in prison and don't know why is not in prison. So when we look at authentic leaders, I think these are the kinds of things that we hope to see in individuals. I cannot move away from Mandela's picture. Can I just say that because along with Barack Obama, he's one of the very, very few authentic leaders in the world. And I think also everyone knows that I'm a big fan of Barack Obama. But if we look at what they do, is the first thing is the realization that we're not perfect. But being not perfect and realizing you're not perfect is a good first step in trying to work on those deficiencies. So obviously I am perfect, so I don't have to work on anything, so none of this applies to me. That's sarcasm in case you missed that, guys. But the truth is, it's about understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Has anyone ever sat down and done a strengths and weaknesses exercise on themselves? If you had to do a strengths and weaknesses exercise on yourself, what would some of those interesting weaknesses be? Tanya, you've done yours. Do you want to share some of the things you are working on in terms of weaknesses, or are you like me where I just have a strengths column? I can talk so much rubbish. It's actually quite disturbing. Teamwork, RT, that is mine as well. I honestly hate working in teams. Oh, geez, Tanya, yeah, no, that is a real headache. Is Culp perhaps got German origin? Is Culp German? Need I say more? Need I say more? Yeah, so A-type personality gets very frustrated if you're late for something. Everything has to be perfect, I's dotted and T's crossed. Sorry, you can't change the German heritage. What is it? Vorsprung durch Technik, isn't it? It's just part of your. No, I know that. The moment you say German, Germans don't like to be late, guys. So the kinds of things that we have is this idea of purpose, meaning, and values. So a clear vision in mind has clear ways of actually making a meaningful difference and has really, really powerful values. And those values relate to ethicality, obviously. Long-term relationships. And I also think that people follow these kind of authentic leaders, these kind of transformational, authentic leaders, simply because you know where you stand with them. Um, I've worked now for Varsity College for 26 years as a contractor, and I always remember the different principals that I've worked with. And a lot of them, you didn't know what you were going to get on in the morning. Now, I've always been a lecturer, so I come in and I go. I don't hang around. Been a contractor, but one of my colleagues from a long time ago, I never worked with her. People could see her mood by how tight she had her ponytail. So it's quite interesting because they had to read a mood on the basis of how tight the ponytail was made. And I think that's the opposite of authenticity because you arrive in a mood to fight. Guys, consistent and self-disciplined. And I also think it's about this. It's about principles and refusing to compromise. I've been approached a number of times to put my name on a tender, and there's no way I would put my name on a tender because it's simply manipulated. Guys, and then just, I think the biggest one here is that you realize you're not perfect and that you work towards that kind of growth all the time. So, in terms of authentic leadership and the five dimensions, the first one, know your vision, know your role in life. The second one, do the right thing. And then it's about relationships based on trust and the idea that you demonstrate self discipline. You want to be the person above reproach when it comes to issues relating to corruption. And lastly, it is about leading from the heart. I think your personality, your humanity is what makes you a wonderful leader. Those translate into that. Quickly have a look at the different elements there. The idea of passion linked to positive behavior, linked to a real connectedness with those around you, the idea of being predictable, and then also compassionate. I think for me, when you see people being devastated by floods and by storm damage, the first thing you do is you show compassion. You don't use it as an opportunity to politicize. This individual cannot do that. I mean, if you read how he's now trying to make the idea of the storm a political thing, instead of going there and saying to people, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. What can we do to help?" It's a strange inability to show compassion. Let me ask quickly, how many of those five define you? Or which is your most powerful one? Values, wonderful, Walter. Values as well, interesting. Yeah, I think it's at the core of everything. Consistency, relationships. Can we see how when we talk about our life, clear, compassion, consistency, you love your C's, C, 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 C. Is that why you CC and you have three C's there as well? Did you do that on purpose, Coculus?
I actually didn't, so
The stuff I notice, hey? You must have realized you were throwing the C's out there. I think for me, when we look at your descriptions, guys, it really is what we expect from managers. It is what we expect from leaders. I don't know how many leaders will tick each of those boxes, but when you find one, you have to appreciate that individual. I've worked with 8 principals on the campus, my main campus, and the simple truth is, I would want to continue working with 2 of them out of the 8. 6 people, I wouldn't honestly, if their car was broken down, I would have a real lack of compassion driving past them. So, in terms of authentic leadership, I think first of all, it is about your person, and then it's about your leadership. But I think the reality is, it's also understanding what authentic leadership is. It is having a sense of what people expect, of what the core trust elements are that people want from us. In terms of the kind of components there, I love this. Internalized moral perspective. Why internalized, guys? Why internalized moral perspective and not just moral perspective? Why internalized moral perspective and not just moral perspective? I think if you adopt the morals of those around you, you are likely to be completely inauthentic. Is it possible for people to change their morality depending on the situation they find themselves in? Is it possible for people to change their morality depending on the situation? It's bloody common, very common, T. Absolutely common. I think people go with the wind. Their morals depend on those individuals around them. And for me, the core part of that, it's hypocrisy. It is absolutely hypocrisy. So the first one is that you're driven by your own morals, and you would hope that those morals have high standards. The second one is a clear self-awareness. And when we think of self-awareness, it's that element that comes into emotional intelligence. Understanding your emotions, understanding your values, understanding how to manage those to maintain authenticity. And then relational transparency. I honestly think one of my favorite lines in this entire textbook is that extraordinarization of the mundane. I think when you have relational transparency, you're able to do that extraordinization of the mundane. I think it's a powerful, powerful way of connecting with people. Guys, and then balanced processing. This is an individual that is level headed. This is an individual that will spend time considering, doesn't fly off the handle. Again, guys, when we consider those individuals we work with, how many do we actually see that fit those specific definitions? So if we look at each of them, the first one, your own moral standards, not those of those around you. But the key thing is know what you stand for. And you would expect a higher level of moral development. But that's 100% right, Tanya. 100% right. It comes to that authenticity, knowing what you stand for, knowing who you are, knowing what you represent in your life. Guys, and that self-awareness. I think we know that these leaders have a real knowledge about themselves, their strengths, their leaders, and then there's also a clear awareness, remember, in terms of emotional intelligence, of how our behavior will impact others. Guys, and then relational transparency, it's about trust, but it's also about the idea of sharing information about yourself. You're not a closed book, you're an open book. People understand who you are, people appreciate who you are. You don't you don't hide who you are all the time. And then balanced processing, I think it really is. They look for the right information, they consider that information, and will essentially make sure that they ask people involved in decisions to contribute to those decisions. So if we look at models of authentic leadership, I think this is the combination of all of those. But for me, the focus is on that there, the trust, the engagement, and then also the well-being in the workplace. And that obviously will give you your performance. Lovely model, guys. It takes each of those elements and it brings it together. And who the one thing that is under researched in leadership, in fact, is followership. We have spent so much time investigating leaders, but we spend very little time on those individuals that actually give people the privilege of being in a leadership position. Guys, and then I think to be an authentic leader, you have to do all four of those things. You can't decide to leave one out because it's uncomfortable. So when we look at the kind of things that will promote authentic leadership in the organization, I'm not going to go through all of those. Which of those stand out for you? I do want to talk about role modeling. We spoke in this class, or it might have been in the previous comp class, how sometimes the role models determine the managers in the organization. And if the role models are negative, you tend to end up with a group of managers that are negative. Have a look at that. Anyone want to talk about those in relation to their own organization? Does anyone work in an organization where these things are problematic? I know that people have shared in the past, and I don't want to delve too deep. Whose organization does that? Because if you think of what a positive organization is, that would be the definition of a positive organization. Yeah, and then ethical leadership. I always think of this specific moment in time. Who remembers this specific event? The VW scandal. Who remembers this event where they manipulated the software that gave the readings for their levels of emissions? I mean, it impacted a lot of vehicles, and it was about those carbon dioxide emissions. It started right at the top. The abuse of the trust that they had with it was an absolute disaster. The abuse of the trust they had with their customers essentially started at the top. People were knowingly using software that manipulated the readings in terms of some of the vehicles. Now, obviously, it didn't have a significant impact in terms of South Africa because, and I'll talk about this guy in a second. It didn't really matter in South Africa because our emissions standards were not as stringent as the European and American ones. But this guy was behind it, and Martin Winterkorn. And the truth is, I think a lot of heads have rolled. I think they're very, very careful. And I think a lot of cars have done the same thing. So, what is an ethical leader? I think the first one is from a deontological perspective. It is the obligation. It is about making a difference. It's about adhering to roles. It's about your sense of duty, but it also talks about the consequentialist role, where you understand the consequences of your behavior, where you understand how your behavior will determine what happens in different situations. Guys, and then just in terms of the ethical leader, and we talk about the moral person and the moral manager. The moral person is really about those things that make you ethical. The moral manager is that individual that would use those standards from the moral person to influence the organization. And the truth is, we want those aligned. And then generally, we would want leaders to be moral in terms of person and manager, and really create an environment where people find their their own self-purpose, their own sense of belonging. In terms of ethical leadership, guys, it is always going to be around a moral process, but also the idea that people in the organization live those standards as well. It's not just one person. It becomes the culture of the organization. It becomes the standard by which we judge our own behavior and those around us in an organization. Guys, and then just in terms of what we want, it's this thing here. It is how those values come to life. And you can see the kinds of things that we expect from an ethical leader. And it is. It's about being generous. It is about being honest. It is about standing up for things that you believe in. It is about the courage to know what is right and what is wrong. Any comments around ethical leadership? Is it fair to say that we have a crisis of ethics in the world today? Is there a crisis? 100%. I think every aspect of society we can identify some sort of crisis of ethics. It permeates the world. It's part of our realities. Absolutely, Tanya. And the problem with those boundaries shifting is that I think we are accepting a lot more in terms of what we now consider ethicality. Because if we don't change our definition of ethicality, we will go completely insane. But you can see in terms of businesses, the kinds of things that happen. We accept fraud, we accept collusion. I mean, if you look at that, it's become part of our standard almost. So is it fair to say, because of the crisis of ethics, people have had to redefine ethics and lower their standards in terms of ethics? Otherwise, they would go completely insane in the world. I don't know whether that's a fair comment. I read this wonderful article about 15 years ago where the person argued, and it was beautifully written and it was slightly tongue in cheek, but he argued the concept of oh, shucks now I've slipped my, he argued the concept of competitive corruption. So that in South Africa we accept that we are corrupt. We accept that people will will take bribes and pay bribes, but we at least give it to those corrupt individuals that will actually do the job. So he argued the idea of competitive corruption. I would love to find that article again, but he used it as a term that sat next to each other, and it is a wonderful indication of how bad the world has become, how bad South Africa had become, where we accept that we're corrupt, but we at least give the work to those corrupted individuals that can deliver. Is that the world we want to live in, though? Or is that a concept that we have to accept because of the crisis of ethics? And yeah, it's actually scary. And you're right. It should become a Olympic event because we would be at the forefront of winning stuff. It's actually quite an honest statement, that team. Yeah, I would love to find that article again. It was really so well written. But I think we've had to redefine what we think ethics is. I don't think we hold politicians to the same standards we would have held politicians to 20, 30, 40 years ago. Or maybe I'm just becoming slightly, yeah, disillusioned with the world. Guys, and then a new, no, not so new concept, the idea of servant leadership. Please tell me what the term servant leadership suggests means to you. What is servant leadership? And yeah, on the face of it, we might argue that it's an oxymoron. It's certainly not an oxymoron. I think servant leadership, guys, is the idea of leading from behind. It is the idea of being a leader, but allowing those followers the opportunity to take the credit for their achievements. In traditional leadership roles, we turn to the leader and we revere the leader. Here, the leader takes a step back and it allows for the followers to essentially be recognized, to be acknowledged. And the truth is, it is something that people are working towards now. The idea of a leader as a servant. Now, I always find it amazing. I did this lecture at UKZN, and people were quite offended by the concept of being a servant. And obviously, when you think of where we were in South Africa and the realities of South Africa. But the one person there was very religious, said to me, but if you're concerned about being a servant, when you go to church, you're a servant of God. And they argued that. That's exactly it. What a beautiful, beautiful description there. So, in terms of being a leader, it's about serving, it's about helping, it's about the needs of those that follow you. It's about the idea that you take your own successes, you draw your own successes from the successes of your individuals. But it is about making people grow. It's about creating opportunities for other people to shine. I think we revere leaders. I don't think we revere followers enough. We see it a bit in our rugby, and I think that's important. Although I think Sia takes a lot of the credit or gets a lot of the leadership stuff. So, guys, in terms of the idea of what a servant leader does, I think it really is that you want to create an environment that people essentially would find value in themselves. You want to create a positive environment. It is about allowing people to grow, allowing people to shine, allowing people to receive the acknowledgement for their contributors. And the key thing, it's you operate in terms of the interests of others. When we look at Donald Trump, it's about self interest. It is not in the interests of others. And that is a real, real concern. So when we look at what a servant leader does, yeah, you can see in terms of the skills, listening. I quite like this idea of withdrawal. It is about understanding that I need to change my own definition of what a leader is and what a leader does. And then some other standards, guys. Again, things that Trump doesn't have. The idea of acceptance, the idea of empathy. But it also is the idea that you have this innate ability to to um, understand the realities of a situation and understand the confusing parts of a situation, but also to create a vision that other people can buy into. And then just other attributes, guys, the idea of awareness, understanding people, understanding their worldviews, the ability to persuade. And I also think it's the opportunity, in particular when you've worked in a highly toxic organization, giving people the opportunities to heal. And then my favorite part of this is that it's about stewardship, and you are there to grow individuals. Any comments about the idea of a servant leader? Have we got many of them around? Has anyone ever worked with a servant leader? I don't think there are too many of those around. I think people are there for their own self-interest, guys. And then just spiritual leadership. I think when we look at spiritual leadership, it is working for a higher purpose. It is understanding that every interaction, every engagement, every moment in an organization is about creating this membership, is about allowing people to feel that they are welcome and needed and valued in an organization. So your job changes from being a job to being a calling, to being something that is bigger than what your job title says. And then, secondly, it is about creating a workplace where people are acknowledged, where people feel comfortable. Again, linked to authenticity, I think it is about your spiritual core, and it has nothing to do with religion, guys. It has zero to do with religion. But I think it is how you view your role in the organization. I always think, does anyone here work for an NGO? Anyone work for an NGO? I think people sometimes go to NGOs not because of the job, but the opportunity to make a difference. It is a calling. It is an idea that I'm serving a bigger purpose. So when we look at spiritual leadership, I think it is about creating a culture where people want to be, where people are comfortable to actually contribute and be part of. And again, you don't talk about employees, you don't talk about managers, you have people who have a calling, and also, guys, you have membership in the organization. And those two elements, leaders seeing themselves as having a calling to make a difference, and employees not being treated as numbers, but as members of this important group. There is the spiritual leadership, guys. You can have a glance at that. I think for me, in terms of the idea of spiritual well-being, I think in a world where people's stress levels are so high and where people take serious strain and where we have so many people on anti-anxiety, anti-depression, antipsychotic medicine, I think if we can create this kind of spiritual organization, and it's not religious, for me, the spirituality has nothing to do with religion. I think it really is where people see themselves as having this calling to make a difference to the bigger purpose in the world. And then, guys, in terms of a spiritual leader, it is about the vision, but it is about a vision that people can identify with, an vision, sorry, a vision that people can embrace. So, guys, in terms of the vision, it's always about high ideals and moral standards, but it is about hope and faith. Again, in a world where so many people are on antipsychotics, antidepressants, anti-anxiety tablets, I think we need these kinds of moments. Now, the first thing is this is not about religion. Religion is about theology and deities and things like that. Spirituality is really about those things that make us human, that make us special. And you can see there love, compassion, forgiveness. And the idea is that you will self-sacrifice because you want to be altruistic, you want to give more of yourself. And then, guys, yeah, in terms of altruistic love, I think it really is about creating harmony and well-being. I think there are too many toxic organizations in the world. And when you look at the kind of things we find in an organization driven by spirituality, it's a wonderful place to be. It is a warm place to be. It is a place where you believe you belong. I'm not talking about a cult, obviously, guys. And then lastly, it really is this idea that it gives us those levels of commitment, and those give you an organization that makes a real difference. Okay. Guys, any questions, comments? I spoke a lot tonight, and I apologize for that. Any questions, any comments at this stage?